Well, I watched CNN last night, so you don't have to. And I saw a very interesting exchange between the transition between Chris Cuomo's show and Don Lemon's. See, Cuomo challenged some Republican who tried to say that the violence at the U.S. Capitol was just an extension of the violence that they've accused George Floyd protests of causing all summer. Now, several Republicans have hopped on corporate liberal networks and have said the same thing on several programs, both on CNN and on MSNBC, and received practically no pushback from any of the hosts on any of the shows until Chris Cuomo responded to this one person, whose name I didn't even bother to remember because who cares, that the protests this summer were about people demanding that unarmed people not be killed by the police, and that equating the violence at the Capitol to those protests was nowhere near the same thing. Cuomo even said that the comparison was apples and oranges. Then the show transitioned to Don Lemon's spot, and Lemon picked up the criticism of his attempt at continuing to demonize the protests over the summer for widespread violence, this Republican guest on Cuomo's show. As pleasantly surprised as I was that this disingenuous comparison was even challenged at all on corporate media, neither of these hosts went farther and pointed out the violence committed against protesters by the right wing and the property damage and actual murders committed by the same folks that right-wing media and politicians have blamed on Black Lives Matter and this nebulous entity, Antifa, that the media still has not definitively set that straight. Now, that was disappointing. But when it comes to corporate media, I'll take what I can get, I guess. But this is why we have to be clear on what we're doing and who our allies are, because we do not want to cede the responsibility for defining who we are to the media, hoping that they'll be kind or hoping that they'll be sort of right when they finally decide to halfway defend us. This is what I think we've done with Antifa, which, of course, you and I know is short for anti-fascist. But the media, both corporate and independent, liberal and conservative leaning, have defined it as some kind of roving gang of left-wing thugs who set fire to trash cans and cop cars and eats babies, I guess. At least that's what a Trump supporter in one of those CNN segments that I watched said that he's seen them do, attack women and children. That's what he said. Now, we certainly can't control the likes of Alex Jones and Ali Alexander, the far-right online conspiracy theorist and organizer of the now infamous Stop the Steal rally at the Capitol, and the lies that they spread about us and our allies. But we sure can never do again what I experienced over the past few years, where too many progressives distance themselves from anti-fascists because of their quote-unquote violence. Now, we're not talking about the kind of violence that we saw at the Capitol, although that's what some people would like you to believe. No, the anti-fascists that we argued over a few summers ago were the people who would stand in between the racists, the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, and the people they were going after and throw hands if they had to, in defense of people against fascism, because, you know, they're anti-fascist and they mean it. These were the people who came to D.C. ready to meet force with force if the neo-Nazis who tried to hold a rally a few years ago here decided they want to do more than rally. Sure, hundreds, if not thousands of regular folk were out in counter-protest that rainy Saturday, but Antifa were there prepared to fight to protect people if they had to. Antifa were the folks who protected the pastors and others holding a training inside a church on the campus of the University of Virginia in 2017, the night the torch-bearing, polo shirt-wearing, new alt-right marched through the campus and surrounded a small group of students protesting at the Robert E. Lee statue. Antifa was the only thing standing in between that racist mob of violent new fascist youth and the church and those protesters being overrun and attacked. This was after a Klan rally and before the racist murder at the Unite the Right assault in Charlottesville. We all should be Antifa, but we were too busy arguing over whether it was a leftist ideal to commit to any kind of violence, with a whole lot of white progressives throwing Martin Luther King Jr. quotes at people in their declaration that the anti-fascists, people who are against Nazism, racism, and fascism, are bad and must be banished from progressivism and leftism. So we spent a whole lot of time in progressive circles hand-wringing about not liking the violence of anti-fascists, both foolishly confusing self-defense with violence, and from what I see, ceding the discussion about anti-fascism and the need for it to the fascists and the media. While we argued about whether physically fighting fascists and racists who want to kill us is the kind of thing we on the left should be doing, we let the fascists and the media define what Antifa is. This, I think, was one of the worst mistakes the progressive left could have made. And I hope we learn from this that we had better be clear on what and who we are, who we're for, and who is with us, or else our enemies will do it for us and use what they concoct against us. Speaking of being clear on who we are and who we're with, I'm not with Uncle Jim Clownburn, or as Sean calls him, Grandpappy Jim. You know who we're talking about, Jim Clyburn, who says that he is drafting a resolution to make Lift Every Voice and Sing a national hymn because that's what will bring us together. He said that. I'm not making this up. Clyburn said in an interview that if he had a son, he would have named him after Everett McKinley Dirksen, the Republican U.S. Senator who did consistently vote for the Civil Rights Act, but he was also consistently economically conservative and voted that way, and also very conservative socially in other areas, even so far as introducing a bill to allow public school administrators to organize prayer in schools after the Supreme Court ruled that they can't do that kind of thing, and was an ardent supporter of the U.S. role in Vietnam. Dirksen is who the Dirksen Senate office building is named after. Now, the man who some would argue single-handedly destroyed the momentum of the campaign of Bernie Sanders in the 2020 Democratic primaries, this is Jim Clyburn, doesn't believe that Medicare for All will heal the people in this country or even in his district, doesn't believe that canceling student loan debt will, doesn't believe the reallocating of funds from police departments that protect abusive and killer cops into public programs for people will heal the nation. But he thinks making the Black national anthem a national hymn will bring us all together. Yes, y'all. We really need to work on who we are, what we believe, and who our allies are, or else we'll keep getting stuck with the Uncle Grandpappy Jim Clyburns of politics, and we can no longer afford that. Follow Luke My Nation on patreon.com/LukeMyNation for lots of great content.